Hello, little birds. Welcome to the library. I am Tish Raven, and this is True Tales. Have you ever wondered what happens to you after you die? Not to your soul, but to your body. Not all graves remain sacred, and our earthly bodies can be disturbed in the grave. And when they do, it can cause chaos. Today's story comes to us from France. In the 18th century, there was a small town, and in that town, there was a good man. He was beloved of his family. He was a pillar of his parish. He was a respected member of his community. And then he died. And so his family decided, as families do, that they were going to hold a funeral. And so they hired 2 gravediggers to dig the grave for their beloved father. And so these 2 men went into the graveyard and took up their spades, and they dug deep into the earth. Shovelful by shovelful, they dug until they had a deep and dark pit. And one of the gravediggers took his spade to bite down into the earth again, and as he did so, he heard... He tried it again, and again. There was something in the grave. He called to his fellow gravedigger, and the 2 of them got down in the earth, and they brushed away the dirt, and they discovered something wooden. They brushed away more dirt, and they realized it was quite large. They brushed away more dirt, and even more dirt still, until they realized that what they had discovered was a coffin. There was a coffin in the grave that they had just begun to dig. And this presented a problem for the 2 gravediggers. Who owns this grave? They asked themselves. Was it the person that was in it? Possession is 9/10 of the law. Or was it the family who had hired them for the day to dig this grave? Well, they argued about it for some minutes, but as it usually does, commerce won in the end. And the gravediggers decided they had been hired to do the job, and they were going to finish that job. And so they had to remove the old grave. So they took their spades and they pried up the lid of the old coffin. And what they found inside was the oldest, grossest, most decrepit and disgusting skeleton that they had ever seen. And piece by piece, bone by ancient bone, they lifted the skeleton out of the coffin. The last thing that they removed was the skull. Neither of them wanted to touch it, but the braver of the 2 He picked up the old head and gently placed it on the earth above him. Now the two gravediggers picked up their spades, and they were just about to go about excavating the old coffin when one of them saw something move out of the corner of his eye. He looked, but the only thing there was the skull. He thought it was strange, and so he nudged his companion. He said, "Hey, did you see anything over there?" And just as his companion turned his head to look at the skull turned all the way around to look at the gravedigger. And the two gravediggers said, "Ah!" And the two gravediggers jumped 9 feet into the air and landed on the ground above them, and they said, "What is happening to us? Why is the skull turning back and forth and moving? This is ridiculous." And one of the two gravediggers said, "I know what it is. It's a demon. That is the bones of a demon. We have to burn it with fire right now." But the other gravedigger, he was a church-going man, and he had a strong faith, and he said, "No!" Well, actually, he was French. He said, "No! This is not a demon we have discovered. Don't you understand? It is a saint. We have a saint right here in our tiny town in France. Who could have imagined that we would have our very own saint? Hallelujah! It is a saint." And they began shouting it. "Hallelujah! It's a saint! It's a saint!" And they ran all the way through the town shouting over and over, "It's a saint! It's a saint!" By this time, they had attracted the attention of quite a few members of the parish. People were poking their heads out of windows and doors, trying to understand what it was that was going on. And the two gravediggers got all the way to the church, and they burst through the doors and terrified the priest. And they said, "We have a saint! There is a saint in our churchyard!" And the priest was so excited, he said, "Hallelujah!" He got a silver tray and a clean white linen, and they marched all the way to the graveyard. And by this time, the entire town had come out of their houses and followed them to the graveyard, taking up the chant, "It's a saint! It's a saint! Hallelujah! It's a saint!" They got to the graveyard, and they picked up the ancient skull and placed it on the silver tray with the clean white linen. And they marched it all the way through town, still chanting, "It's a saint! It's a saint!" all the way to the church. They placed the skull on the altar upon its silver tray. And the celebration that ensued is not like any celebration that you or I have ever attended. There were hallelujahs and praises and Ave Marias and other things that Catholics do as well. And just as the church was about to sing their 7th All Father, the skull upon the altar began to shake violently, and everyone in the church fell silent. And then the skull began to open its mouth ever so slowly. And everyone gasped. "He's going to speak to us," they whispered. "We are going to hear the words of the saint." Everyone held their breath as the skull's mouth opened wider and wider and wider. The tension in the room was so thick you could have cut it with a knife. The silence was so heavy you could have heard a pin drop. And just as the mouth of the skull got all the way opened, a little black mole popped right out of the mouth of the skull, ran down the aisle of the church, and was never seen again. Well, everyone went home, and the two gravediggers, who were feeling quite silly, went back to the churchyard to finish the job they started. And that might have been the end of it, except that there just so happened to be a newspaper reporter in that town on that day. And that reporter got on a boat the next day and sailed across the English Channel, where he got on another boat, and he sailed across the Atlantic Ocean all the way to the colonies, where he landed in Virginia. And he reported this story of that silly French town in the Virginia Gazette. And that story has survived to us today. So the next time that you encounter something eerie, ghostly, or supernatural, make sure that you know exactly what it is before the newspapers find out. Thank you for joining me in the library. I am Tish Raven, and I bid you good reading.